The story begins with the Annabelle case in 1968. Friends Camilla and Debbie report that their doll, Annabelle, initially showed strange movements on her arms and legs, and then they began to find her in different rooms. When they contacted a medium, they learned that a little girl named Annabelle Higgins had died in the same apartment building. They explained that they had allowed the spirit to get into the doll because her spirit wanted to be friends, but things only got worse. One day, they returned home to find a note by the door that says, "Miss me?" and the doll stares at them from the end of the hallway, crayons in her hand. They found the room where they had left her in before leaving the house in complete disarray and damaged. Debbie can't bear it anymore and throws the doll in the trash in the street. That night, as they fall asleep, but hear someone knocking loudly on their door. They open the door and find the same note on the floor that says, "Miss me." This time, there was a loud knock on the door of one of the rooms. When Camilla opens the door, she's horrified to see the doll there. We return to where the story began, and Camilla and Debbie seek help from paranormal researchers Ed and Lorraine Warren. They tell the girls that there's no such thing as Annabelle, that this thing is an inhuman spirit, and that letting it into the doll in the first place was a huge mistake, because these spirits possess people, not objects. Ed and Lorraine then show the details of this file at a conference where they turn off the video and say that they sent a priest from the church to bless the house and the occupants, and that they managed to get rid of that spirit. They answer the questions of the participants.
We go to Harrisville, Rhode Island in 1971. Roger and Carolyn Perrin move into their new home with their family. Everyone goes inside, but their dog, Sadie, refuses to go in despite their insistence. While everyone else is helping move things, Cindy searches for her wind chime and finds it. After asking her mother for permission to hang it, she does so and calls her sister, April, inside. After examining the music box she found there, April goes inside too. As the girls play, Roger asks them if they finished their meal. Blindfolded, Christine tries to find the others and follows the sounds of applause. Although their mother says they don't know the house well enough, they continue playing. Christine opens the cellar door, and realizing her sister is there, she tags her. At that moment, they hear a crash, and their father and mother arrive and see the wall damaged. Roger asks the others for matches and sees that it leads to a basement, but it's covered in cobwebs from being unused for so long. The others, curious about what's going on, ask him what he sees. Roger's match goes out and he lights another. He says he sees an old piano and a few other objects and goes upstairs. They don't understand why it's boarded up, but they close the door to check in the morning again.
As they prepare for bed, their dog, Sadie, whom they couldn't bring in, becomes cranky and starts barking. They fall asleep, and in the morning, Carolyn wakes up with a pain and a bruise on her leg. She checks on her children and listens to Andrea complain about a foul odor yesterday and the toilet not working. When she goes downstairs, she sees their clocks have stopped. Then she sees the pantry door open, and realizing Roger is in the basement, goes over and examines the belongings. She plays the piano and picks up a ball and goes upstairs. Roger starts trying to work the furnace. While Carolyn is making coffee, she sees their other clock has also stopped at 3:07, which she finds odd. When her daughter, April, asks where their dog is, she tells her that he's outside. She then tells his husband about the clock's strange state and points out the wound on her knee. When they hear April scream, they both rush to her side and find their dog, Sadie, lying lifeless. We go to Warren's house in Monroe, Connecticut. Ed shows a reporter the room where they keep all the items from their previous cases and warns him not to touch any of them. He explains that they ask a priest to come in once a month to bless the room, which is how they imprison evil spirits rather than destroying the items. The reporter then asks for Annabelle doll, and when he goes to look at it, he listens to its story from Ed. When he asks about his wife, Lorraine, and the misfortune that occurred during a previous exorcism, Ed notices that his daughter is secretly watching them. Therefore, he takes her upstairs and asks her grandma to attend to her. He then goes to his wife, who is joking with her daughter, and gives her coffee. Lorraine tells her not to blame himself.
Night falls, and we see that the Perrin family put their dog, Sadie, in the cemetery. The clock in the house stops again when it reaches 3:07 a.m. Christine wakes up to a sudden shaking in her bed. Thinking Nancy is joking, she tells her it's not funny. She then thinks she's holding her foot, tells her it smells terrible, and warns her not to fart. Nancy says she has not done any of that. Their television comes on, and Roger wakes up to the sound of knocking all around. He tries to understand the creaking and rattling sounds that continue. After turning off the television, he goes out into the hallway. As the knocking continues, one of the doors slowly opens. Roger slowly walks to the other side, sees nothing happening, and closes the door, only to discover their window is open. Hearing the sounds continue, he goes upstairs and finds Andrea standing there, and learns that Cindy is sleepwalking again. He sees Cindy hitting her head against the wardrobe, restrains her, and, trying not to wake her, takes her back to bed. In the morning, Roger and Carolyn discuss how Cindy hasn't been sleepwalking for a long time. Roger, noticing another scar on his wife's back, tells her she needs to see a doctor. Later, when he goes out to work, he sees a bird crash into their house and die. Carolyn sends her children off to school. When she sees her daughter April talking to herself, she asks who she's talking to. April tells her she's talking to her friend Rory, and that when the music on the music box stops, she can see him standing behind her in the mirror. Carolyn turns the key on the music box and focuses on the mirror. After she stares at it for a long time, April tells her that she's been tricking her by scaring her. She then tells her she wants to play hide and clap, insists on it, and then blindfolds her. After turning and counting, Carolyn begins to touch her surroundings, asks her daughter to clap first, and she follows the sound. After asking for the second clap, she enters one of the rooms, and when she hears the sound of the wardrobe door opening, she asks for the third clap and thinks that she has finally found it, therefore searches for the clothes, but she hears April coming to her from the other room and checks the inside of the wardrobe again with surprise and anxiety.
Roger arrives home in his truck and tells his wife that the new route he'll take tomorrow will be a week long. Everyone falls asleep at night, and when Christine's food is pulled again, she warns Nancy one more time. But when the next pull is much stronger, she wakes up and sees Nancy asleep. Terrified, she checks the end of the bed, pulls back, peers under the bed, and sees nothing. Then, seeing the bedroom doors slowly move, she sits up and, horrified, tries to wake her sister. Nancy, seeing Christine crying, tries to understand what's going on. Her sister tells her there's someone behind the door, so she goes and tells her there's no one. The door suddenly slams shut, and Christine's screams are heard throughout the house. Roger and Carolyn rush over and try to open the door. When they finally succeed, they try to calm Christine down. Christine tells them that the thing talked to her, saying it wants her family dead. We go to the Warrens' house, and while Lorraine is playing with their daughter, Ed comes to her. At first, he tries to lie and say he's going to the store, but he can't quite manage it. He admits that Father Gordon has a new case he wants them to look into. He refuses to accept his wife's request, but when Lorraine insists, he finally agrees.
They go to a family's house and say the creaking sound is coming from a piece of wood, and because it's right next to the pipes leading to the radiator, it's spreading throughout the house, but it's not haunted actually. Carolyn, facing increasingly worsening sores, takes medication prescribed by her doctor, which she attributes to iron deficiency. While organizing the clothes, she thinks she hears a noise, turns off the radio. She goes to her daughter's room. After making sure they're all asleep, she turns on the lights and looks around but sees nothing. Finally, while checking Andrea's room, she hears the paintings on the lobby walls suddenly fall to the floor and hears laughter too. She goes there, slowly descends the stairs, turns on the lights, and looks around, trying to figure out who's there. As she's about to enter the living room, she hears applause and goes that way, asking who's there. As she passes the study room, she hears the basement door creak and heads toward it. Looking down, she sees no one. She threatens to close the door on whoever is downstairs. She turns to leave, but the door slams shut in her face, and she falls down the stairs. She's in pain from the injuries she sustained, and she looks around in fear. Then, when she sees a toy ball being thrown at her from among the furniture, she runs upstairs in fear and tries to open the door, but she can't. Because the light bulb blows, she tries to light a match to see who the laughter she hears belongs to. When her match goes out, she lights a new one, and when she hears a girl's voice saying, "Do you want to play hide and clap?" and applauding next to her, she struggles, terrified, to open the door.
Andrea wakes up to find Cindy sleepwalking again, hitting her head on the closet. She goes to her sister and takes her to her own bed, but hears the banging continue. She cautiously approaches the closet and opens its doors to find nothing inside. Cindy, waking up, looks up, and a terrifying woman appears on top of the closet and jumps on Andrea. When Roger returns home from work, he hears the screams and rushes inside. After rescuing Carolyn from the basement, he runs to his daughters and sees Andrea struggling by herself. He asks everyone what's going on here. We go to Wakefield, Massachusetts Western University. Ed and Lorraine give another lecture where they describe how a not-so-well-educated farmer, after being possessed, began speaking fluent Latin, shed blood as tears, and the sign of an inverted cross appeared on his body. They then take questions from the participants, explaining that while they participate in exorcisms, they don't perform them. After adding that the farmer they were discussing ultimately committed suicide to avoid killing his wife, they talk about the 3 stages of demonic activity: infestation, oppression, and possession. We see Carolyn in the audience listening to them. After the lecture, she approaches them and asks them to come to their home to check on the situation. After some insistence, she manages to convince them.
Ed and Lorraine then go to the parent house and meet Roger too. Lorraine seems to notice something strange about him. She then wants to meet the girls waiting for them, and Carolyn explains that they all sleep in the living room together now for safety. While there's nothing wrong with the furnace, the house is constantly very cold and they continuously smell something bad. They say they lock the door because they hear 3 knocks constantly around dawn. Ed, hearing this, says this is usually done because it's an insult to the Trinity of the Father, the Son, and the Spirit. Roger and Carolyn mention that birds hit the house and die, and the clocks stop at 3:07. They show the photos that fell on the floor earlier. Ed and Lorraine first look at the wardrobe, then go down to the basement where Lorraine closes her eyes and hears as a buzzing in her mind the horrific events that took place there. When they sit down to catch their breath, Carolyn answers their question about the injuries on her body by saying her doctor said they were caused by iron deficiency. Roger says they've spent all their money here, so moving elsewhere is impossible. Ed opens the audio recording and, after providing the case information, begins investigating the incident from the beginning. Meanwhile, Lorraine speaks with April, asking her about Rory, whom she claims is her friend, and learns that Rory is constantly sad. She tells her she wants to see him, picks up the music box, and after waiting a while, she sees a small child appear in the mirror for a moment. She goes outside and walks toward the pond. As Ed approaches, she sees a body hanging from a tree behind him and loses her balance. Roger explains that they bought the house through a bank auction, so they don't know the previous owner. Ed says it needs a cleansing, an exorcism. Carolyn says they will leave the house immediately then, but Lorraine says that won't be possible because she saw the spirit haunting the place in the tree at the bottom of the pond, behind them when she first entered the house, and then next to the girls. She explains that this dark entity has latched itself onto them and is feeding off them. She adds that her main concern is that one of the spirits is so hateful. Ed explains that exorcism isn't that easy, that it can even fail, and that most importantly, they'll need to gather evidence to convince the church to execute it. Before leaving, Ed tells them that even if they haven't baptized their children yet, they'll want to because the spirits here won't like what they will try to do. Judy shows Lorraine the necklaces she and her nanny bought at a churchyard sale, which contain photos of her mother and father, and gives one as a gift. Later, while Lorraine is sitting in the living room, Ed approaches her and tells her that, strangely, Carolyn's voice wasn't recorded, and plays the recording that has only his voice. Lorraine tells him what she found, explaining that the house was built in 1863 by a man named Judson Sherman, who married a woman named Bathsheba. She is related to Mary Town Este, and that she was one of the women accused of witchcraft in Salem and was hanged during the trials. After marrying Bathsheba, Judson caught his wife sacrificing their child, who was just 7 days old. The woman ran outside, climbed a tree by the lake, proclaimed her love to Satan, cursed anyone who would take her land, and then hanged herself. The time of death was determined to be 3:07 a.m. Then a woman named Walker lived in the house in the 1930s. Her child, Rory, mysteriously disappeared in the woods, and she killed herself in the cellar. The original 200-acre farm has since been divided and sold. Another child drowned in a pond, and a woman working as a maid in another neighboring house committed suicide. As they discuss all this, the tape recorder starts working again, and they hear strange screaming sounds, unlike the previous recording. Their watch stops at 3:07. Ed and Lorraine go to the parents' house with Officer Brad and Officer Drew. They take their belongings and go inside, install cameras in various rooms and hallways, and bells on the doors. Similarly, they set up a camera system near the tree by the lake. During this time, Ed explains that the cameras are connected to a thermostat so that they can take photos in response to any temperature change. Lorraine, as a medium, touches Carolyn's hand while organizing the photos with her and sees one of her memories. Carolyn recounts the day the photo was taken and then places it on the shelf. As Drew is showing Andrea how one of the tools works, they see one of the doors open and the bell ring. But fortunately, Brad emerges and says he was just using the restroom. After completing the installation, they carefully listen to all the appliances in the house to make sure they are working. Ed then draws out holy water and leaves religious symbols in various corners of the house. The cellar door opens and the camera, sensing the temperature difference, takes photos. They quickly grab their cameras and recorders and go down to the basement. Ed tells the spirits to contact them if they want to communicate with them, and he holds up the recorder. He thinks he might hear something, but when he sees Lorraine getting sick in a different spot, he heads there. They wait a while longer, but when they don't get what they want, they decide to leave. Meanwhile, they think they hear something, but nothing happens. On the other side, after they leave the cellar, the door suddenly slams shut. Brad and Drew remain vigilant, relieved to see that the clock hasn't stopped at 3:07. Ed and Lorraine review the recordings. The next day, they all have breakfast together. Roger suggests taking the girls out for ice cream, but Carolyn says she's tired and needs some sleep. Ed agrees, saying they can stand guard themselves. Brad leaves because his shift is about to start. Ed approaches Lorraine while she's hanging the laundry. After explaining that they need to help this family, he walks away. Suddenly, the weather worsens, and the wind picks up, and objects begin to move. One of the clothes breaks loose, suddenly forming a shape as if it were a person, and then flies back up onto the house, landing on the window. Lorraine sees a body moving against the window and rushes inside. Carolyn, who is asleep, gets another scar on her arm, and she wakes up screaming. She's startled by the terrifying woman vomiting something into her mouth. Lorraine quickly runs there and tries to open the door, but fails. When she tries to go from the other side, Carolyn opens the door, says that nothing happened, she is fine, and that she heard Roger and the girls, so she goes downstairs. When Roger returns, he sees Ed repairing his car and goes to see him.
He thanks him for all his help, and Ed points out that he can't take full credit, pointing out that his wife, Lorraine, always helps out on every case, but she's always losing a piece of her. He explains that something she saw on another case they worked on a few months ago had a profound effect on her, and she didn't leave her room, eat, or speak for 8 days afterward.
Everyone's gathered again at midnight, and Brad goes to the kitchen for more coffee. He hears the wind chime moving and looks out the window. He hears a woman whispering, "Look what she made me do." Brad opens the door, goes out, and looks around. Seeing nothing, he goes back in. This time, he sees a woman disguised as a maid appear in one of the rooms, pointing to the cuts on her wrists and repeating the same phrase. He follows her, but when he turns back, he's startled as the woman suddenly approaches him, shouting, "Look what she made me do." He shouts for the others. They see the camera working across the hall. Realizing it's Cindy, they let her go because Ed says a spirit is with her, but once the door slams shut, they quickly run to open it. Meanwhile, Drew goes to his equipment and starts listening in, letting Lorraine listen to another child's voice too. The child's voice says, "Follow me, this is where I hide." When they manage to enter the room, they search everywhere but can't find Cindy. Ed asks Brad to bring the UV light, and after getting it, he turns off the lights and follows the footprints. Seeing that the tracks eventually disappear into the wardrobe, he opens the back of the wardrobe and finds Cindy sleeping against the wall. As they safely remove the girl, April mentions that her friend Rory also hides there when he gets scared.
Lorraine peers through the wall and examines the area. Noticing an item missing from the toy shelves, she asks Ed for the music box. When she retrieves it, she puts it back where it belongs. Leaning down, she sees a rope and pulls it. When she stands up, the board she's standing on can't support her, and she screams, falling all the way to the basement. Ed quickly runs downstairs and calls out to her, thinking she's still somewhere between the walls. Lorraine grabs her flashlight and looks around, dazed, trying to figure out where she is. Seeing the music box beside her, she turns it on and uses the flashlight to look around in the mirror. She sees a woman holding a corpse and a bloody knife, crying, "She made me do it!" When she tries to look with her own eyes, the woman disappears, but suddenly reappears before her. She looks away, then disappears again, but this time another woman's feet appear, spin around, and advance on Lorraine. The woman screams in fear and runs away. She tries to make her husband, still searching for her, hear her voice, but this time the spirit pulls her by the necklace. Lorraine breaks free and goes upstairs, telling Ed she knows what he did, that she possessed the mother to kill the child. That's why she visits Carolyn every night, and that she's caused scars due to feeding off of her. Meanwhile, religious symbols begin to fall one by one, and Nancy's hair flies up. Then, an unseen spirit throws her aside, dragging her across the floor. Seeing they can't contain her, Lorraine grabs a pair of scissors and cuts her hair off. Drew catches the whole thing on camera. As they all leave the house, Ed tells them he'll give the footage to Father Gordon and that he'll be back with an exorcist. But Lorraine might not be able to make it, and Drew will be with them until then. Meanwhile, Lorraine hears a faint voice in the distance calling, "Mommy," and heads in that direction. As she gets closer, the voice grows louder, and she sees her own daughter, Judy, swimming in the lake. She tries to reach her, but can't. She quickly runs home and calls her mother, asking her to check on Judy and make sure she's okay. Relieved to hear that nothing's wrong, she explains to Ed what's happened, saying she knows it was a warning. We see the Perrin family all go to a motel together, and Carolyn ponders. Father Gordon, reviewing the video footage, tells Ed that the children in this family are not baptized, and that they are not members of the church, and that approval would have to come directly from the Vatican. Ed convinces him after saying they've never seen anything like this before, and getting Father to look at the photos further. At night, rain falls, and Judy's necklace and her mother, Lorraine's necklace, which she had been forced to abandon in the other house, begins to swing. Awoken by a sudden tug on her foot, Judy looks around, stands up, and calls out for her parents. She turns on the light and checks her parents' room. Not seeing them there, she goes downstairs and notices that the basement door, which her father had previously warned her not to enter, is open. Lightning flashes briefly illuminate the surroundings, and we see Annabelle doll missing. As Judy heads back upstairs, she sees the light go out and the surroundings begin to darken. She runs into one of the rooms. Frightened by the pounding, she runs away and covers her ears. Then, seeing the light in that room also go out, she turns back and sees an old woman in a chair braiding Annabelle doll's hair. When the doll turns her head and looks at her, Judy screams in fear, waking her grandmother to come to her aid. When she looks back, she sees that the old woman and the doll are gone. Meanwhile, Roger and Lorraine, returning home, hear what is happening and quickly rush over. Ed tries to open the door, telling his daughter to stay away, but the chair spins around and aims at Judy. At the last moment, Ed manages to open the door and saves his daughter from the chair being thrown at them. Seeing his daughter mention Annabelle, he quickly goes to the other room, finds the doll still there, locked, and informs the others.
Roger returns home to find his daughter saying that their mother has taken Christine and April with her. The girls also complain that she smelled like rotten meat. Meanwhile, we see Carolyn driving away with her children. Roger calls Ed and explains what happened. Lorraine tells him that the mother has been possessed, and they agree to meet at the house. Roger tells the girls to stay at the motel and drives off. Ed wants to leave Lorraine with Judy, but when he sees she wants to come and help solve this once and for all, he can't resist. They and Brad race home. Finding the door locked, Brad opens fire, blowing it up. They hear screams coming from the basement and rush there to find Carolyn trying to stab Christine with scissors, while Drew and Roger try to stop her. Brad puts his gun aside and helps the others. Together, they try to restrain Carolyn and decide to take her to the priest for exorcism. In the chaos, April runs away in fear, and as the others try to pull frantic Carolyn out of the house, her wounds become more visible and begin to hurt her. Lorraine warns them that the witch will kill her if they take her out. Carolyn is suddenly pulled back. She tries to hold on and screams for help to Roger, but she's dragged into the basement and slammed around by the unseen spirit. Drew puts Christine in the car, calms her, and returns home to find April. Carolyn, in rage, throws Roger aside and lunges at Ed. She bites Brad in the face as he tries to restrain her, then lunges at Ed again. Lorraine drapes a nearby sheet over Carolyn. While the others restrain her, she brings a chair and rope to help them bind her. Carolyn grabs Ed by the throat and pins him to the ground. Brad handcuffs her. Ed says they need to call the priest, but Lorraine says they don't have time for that, therefore Ed says he'll do it himself then. Although Roger insists for a priest, Lorraine says that Ed can do it, and not accepting her husband asking them to leave him alone in this process, she says she will do it with him and goes to get the book. Meanwhile, Drew is still searching for April in every room. Lorraine quickly takes the book and gives it to Ed, listening to Carolyn's moaning sounds along with the spirit. Ed begins reading the book and throws holy water on Carolyn, but as soon as he does, Carolyn and the witch begin to moan louder and move objects nearby. Christine hears birds flying around and screams as one of them breaks the car window. Drew also hears birds crashing onto the house and sees a large flock of them surrounding it. Birds also begin entering the basement through the window. Seeing the surroundings begin to shake even more, Ed asks the others to hold Carolyn steady while he continues reading aloud. As Drew continues his search in the kitchen, he hears a child crying and thinks it's coming from underneath the floor. As Ed continues reading, the shaking intensifies. Roger, thinking he's going to kill her, begs him to stop. Lorraine tries to reach Carolyn, hoping to talk to her. After a while, Roger, seeing his wife covered in blood, rushes to stop Ed, but Lorraine stops him, telling him they must continue from now on for Carolyn's soul. As soon as Ed finishes reading, the witch who possessed Carolyn tears the sheet, revealing part of her face. Drew grabs a poker and begins to pierce the base. The witch is driven mad, unable to stand still, and causes surrounding objects to dislodge. Ed continues reading, but Carolyn and the witch suddenly go silent and the tremors subside. Then the witch suddenly lifts Carolyn into the air and she begins to scream. When she hears Ed continue reading, she flips her over and slams her against the ceiling. Ed shouts at the witch to put her down, repeating this several times. Carolyn falls to the floor and escapes the chair that breaks beneath her. Ed narrowly escapes the cabinet falling on him, and when he hears the witch, still in Carolyn's body, begin to laugh, he tells the others to hold her. He climbs onto the cabinet and continues reading. Roger tells the witch to abandon his wife's body and leave his family alone. However, the witch uses Carolyn's body to look at him, telling him that his wife is long gone and that everyone here will die. She draws the shotgun from the side and fires at them, but Brad manages to save Ed at the last moment. Drew shouts that he has finally found April and tells the others where she is. Hearing this, the witch grabs the scissors on the ground and escapes through the gap, entering the wall and advancing towards the girl. The others chase after her, but they cannot pass through the gaps like she does and cannot prevent the witch from finding the girl. Left with nothing to do, Ed shouts the witch's name as Bathsheba, attracting her attention. By the power of God, he condemns her back to hell. The witch screams. Lorraine touches Carolyn's head, urging her not to give up. Ed then asks Roger to speak to his wife and help her fight from within. Lorraine tells her to recall the memory she showed her from the photograph earlier, and Carolyn fights back, finally managing to vomit with the last of her strength. Her body returns to normal.
The weather clears up, and Carolyn, emerging into the sunlight, recovers from her injuries. She embraces her daughter, April, with both joy and sadness, apologizes to her, and tells her she loves her very much. She then hugs her husband and the other daughters who just arrive. Ed and Lorraine are also happy to have saved the family and watch their joy with pleasure. Brad, who has escaped with only minor injuries, jokes with Drew. April, meanwhile, gets up and goes to Lorraine, giving her the necklace she had to leave in the basement earlier. When they arrive home, Lorraine calls Father to inform him of what happened, and Ed places the music box among the other belongings. Lorraine tells him that the Vatican approved of exorcism and that Father wants to meet with them for another case. As they leave the room, we see the music box begin to play. Its mirror spin, and the story ends here. Since this is all based on a true story, we also see the photos of the real Warren and the real Perron family.